here with Bob Nellis, drummer on the Sunset Strip in my band's Shock for a little bit, Boy Elroy, but he's also a guy that has a lot of experience on the Strip, a lot of inside knowledge of the record business, and the inside knowledge of the marketing of, products like t-shirts, designing platinum albums, all of these things. But let's get right to the nitty-gritty. Was the Shock House the most infested house of ill repute you've ever seen?
Oh, without a doubt. There's not even a close second.
And I could probably safely say you were smart enough to probably maybe only swing by 10 times.
No, way more than that. We'll leave all names out of this because it turns out it's better. But my first drum set ever in life was burned to a crisp in the Shock House. And I'm still mad about it because it had some sentimental value. It was an old Sonar. It was a really cool set. I lent it to one of the roommates over there. You know who I'm talking about.
Yeah.
Fashioned himself as a drummer. And I don't think he ever played it, but he burned it. And he wasn't even that sorry about it. He was like, "Oh, sorry, Nelly. It wasn't my fault." Like,
oh my God. Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, I was there. And
yeah, you were there. During the fire?
Yes. This is a story that I've not told on my channel. But basically, I was in my room. We were all planning to go out. And you know how the power will go, it'll surge like zzz. Yep. Well, something was going on, something wasn't right. And I opened up my door and I walked out and I looked to my left and at the garage, and I see smoke billowing out of the garage. And Johnny was in the shower, which was in up on the stoop into the house immediately to the right. He was in there in the shower. And I go to the bathroom. I said, "Johnny, your house is on fire." and he's like, "No, screw you." And I'm like, dude, your house is on fire. Yeah, right. Screw you. And all of a sudden, the fire department come, and they're dragging the hose through the backyard before he even really knew it. And he comes out like the front door's open. There's Mexicans in the street. There's the old guy next door. Everyone's worried, that the whole neighborhood's going to go up in flames. And Johnny comes out of the shower, and the fire department's coming, and they're hosing the place down. But everything was pretty much toast. The only thing that was salvaged out of that was his friend Mike's Marshall head and cab. Now, they were singed and baked inside road cases.
Oh.
But it was sitting there then, and Mike was kind of like, nobody wants a burnt amp in their apartment. So I'm like, "Well, Mike, you mind if I use this?" So I'm using this singed.
Still sounds good.
It sounded awesome. It totally made you sound like you were like totally fried.
Yeah, you were on fire.
I was just smoking, bro. It was just smoke just searing off the amp, man.
Not only your guitar, but my amp smoked too.
My amp is smoking. I'm smoking. Everyone at the party is smoking. In fact, we played that. I used that rig at a backyard party that we had picked up somehow, and the cops were there literally in like 20 minutes. Like, we played like 2.5 songs.
Yeah.
And it was immediately shut down. I don't know if you remember that.
They were good. The cops were very fast about getting to stuff like that. They're not very good at getting to stuff they should go to, but they were good about breaking up parties. We're probably too loud, but
and the fire department was very good that day in actually getting that fire. I mean, dude, before we even knew it, the neighbors had seen the smoke billowing out. And somebody must have called the fire.
It was a guest house, right? So it wasn't part of the main house.
It was a garage.
He was in a garage.
And it was it was previously Jamie's room.
Yeah.
And then, so I can only imagine that perhaps something was left in an ashtray that probably
Did the fire department do any investigations?
no, no. It was just come spray these animals
Yeah, they
garage
just looked at
down.
you guys and went,
Yeah.
there's no point in figuring out what
It's
happened.
it's like the story of Rambo. I thought the guy's name was Psycho, but there was this guy Rambo that was staying on the couch for a couple of nights. I think this is maybe before you joined the band. But long story short, he pulls a knife on the girls while me and a couple of the guys we're talking about were at the getting beer. And we come back to drive up to the house, and the house is surrounded by cop cars. And Jamie, Greg, these two girls that were living in the middle room, and this Rambo guy are all on the front lawn, handcuffed like this. And I'm driving like, dude,
Drive by. Just keep going.
dude, yeah, dude. I go, just keep going, just keep going. And we rolled past and went to the rehearsal place, got in the back of the truck and cowered into the bed of my truck going, dude, what do we do? What do we do? I don't know, man.
I'm a long way from Virginia.
Oh man. Yeah, I still had Virginia plates. That's
I did
that's
I did see somebody having sex at the Shock House.
I don't believe that.
You want to know?
Playing saxophone.
Saxophone.
Yeah.
Actually, a bunch of us saw this person.
Okay. Oh, okay.
We were all peeking in and giggling like we were in school.
Cackling like hens.
Yeah. I won't mention who it was,
I won't mention who it was either.
but we both know him.
And we both know him. Yes. Man,
Um,
so now that we've given them a taste of what people want, because they want that Sunset Strip nitty gritty.
yeah.
But I want to know like your origin story as far as, picking up the drums, in the more exciting and rapido, mucho rapamente way. Tell me what made you go, man, I got to play drums and I'm going to get a drum set.
I think, well, my dad was a drummer, but it didn't right away catch with me. And I think Led Zeppelin probably did it. Like I got to that age where, you know, high school, we're in the era where weed was allowed in high school or not really frowned upon. And one thing led to another. And my dad had a drum set, and I got in a bunch right before my first drum lesson. That's probably a fun story. I got in trouble, like my friends and I were throwing things at cars on the freeway.
Oh, that's
And
always lovely.
yeah, like back when Catholic, I went to a Catholic school, so all the Catholic school kids, any rebellion was
Yeah,
good. So
was good there. Yeah.
yeah, so we were throwing things at people. We were all about like, I guess Jesus won't take us down today.
General Mayhem.
Yeah. So we got caught, and I had like my first drum lesson, like I had to be 12 years old because I started playing when I was 12, like that Friday. And I was shocked. Like I got grounded and all the normal stuff, but I was shocked. It was like, can I go to my drum lesson? And he's like, yeah. So that was probably a good sign.
Yeah.
And then just basically it caught with me. Like I was an athlete. I was playing baseball. I'd wrestled. I'd played hockey, and they were starting to find an end point. And then I could have played high school baseball, but I started to get into the band thing, and I got in a band early, and I started to go, I could play. This is probably very smart of like a 14 or 15-year-old. I go, I could play drums my whole life. There's no chance I'm playing baseball past high school. So I kind of dug in when all my friends started getting stoned, and we would listen to music, and these guys were doing this every day. I started to go, man, I could listen to music, or I could go play it.
And you could figure it, you could hear it too.
Yeah. And I started
To hear
I'm
it.
not coming over anymore. And they kind of all were mad at me because I didn't go hang out with them anymore. And I went
Yeah.
to go practice. And that led to, I think we all were the heroes of our hometown, right? I was
Yeah.
in the best band, Big Fish in the Little Pond,
Yeah.
and then went down to LA. I wish I knew what I know now.
Yeah.
Like I thought I was kind of hot shit and I was in my town, but it's such a little thing.
Yeah. Yeah.
Probably the coolest thing my dad did was I was all about John Bonham, and he took me up to San Francisco and took me to see Buddy Rich when I was,
Wow.
yeah, in a really small club.
Was he ripping?
Oh my God. I thought at that time I thought John Bonham was the best drummer on the planet.
Yeah.
And within 2 hours of seeing Buddy Rich, I was like, this guy makes John Bonham look silly. Yeah, oh yeah. He was doing stuff I didn't even know you could do.
You could do. Yeah.
Yeah. And then
Just
that changed me into more like I started to look at the fusion stuff um
it's a
and that
gateway.
probably made me, yeah, you start to play other stuff.
Yeah. And you're kind of, is this like the San Francisco area
Yeah,
or
totally.
wow. So I mean, that's a happening scene though, you know?
Yeah. It would the thing that I've noticed later in life was that scene was a lot funkier and I was getting those roots than I knew.
Yeah.
Tower of Power was out of there and a lot of
And all
these
the
like,
Oakland stuff.
yeah. When I first moved to Utah, I would go see bands and I would see drummers and I would go, oh my God, if you never listened to Tower of Power or Earth, Wind and Fire in your life, and they're like, no, it's all metal. And I'm like,
Yeah.
you guys need some groove.
It's only one thing. Now you combine
Yeah.
the metal with the groove, then you got something, right?
Yeah, then you're a little bit different than everybody else. So
Yeah.
I think my calling was always funk bands, but which is why I like Shock, the horns, right?
Yeah. Yeah. Now you told me that if I remember correctly, you took some drum lessons from Dave Garibaldi,
I
the
did,
drummer for Tower of Power. Can you tell us about that?
of course. I was in UCLA. I went to college at UCLA. That's how I ended up in SoCal. And then I just stayed. But during that, I saw some like David Garibaldi is doing a seminar in the Valley. And I went to this seminar. I had no idea. I was pretty shy still. At that point, I was doing more college than playing.
Yeah.
So I go to this thing, and you were supposed to bring your drum set, and there were like 10 drummers.
Wow.
And he went around the room. And David was very funny. And in that thing, I remember sticking my foot in my mouth. And at the time, I was playing a Ludwig Caroline pedal, and David played it too. And I mentioned that, and I go, in front of this whole group, I go, you know who else plays it?
Oh no, I play it. Did you
No,
do
Gina
that?
Shock from the Go.
Oh, okay.
And
Okay.
David just laughed. He goes, Gina Shock. And
So
I'm like, as I said it, I heard it. And I'm like, yeah, she's not in that same category.
you busted his balls a little bit.
Yeah. And then I pointed out to him that she had finished higher than Bonham on some poll. And we
Wow.
got a good laugh out of that. So
Woo.
I kind of chased Garibaldi down after that.
Yeah.
And he lived in the Valley at the time. And this is how old we are, Brad. I took lessons with him. I was like, I want private lessons, like you're the guy. And I took a few years of lessons with him. And I was the guy that went to him and went, David, would you write down what's that?
Whip
Really
cakes.
Squib Cakes, the opening for me.
Yeah.
And he goes, oh my God, I haven't written this out in years.
Woo.
Think of that. He's written a bunch of books since then.
Yeah, yeah.
He's written it out, but I still have it in my archive somewhere. I have all
Wow.
Garibaldi's lessons, and it was, I learned that's where I learned all grace notes, right?
Wow.
And he was right about stuff that I didn't like. He used to say a 1/2 inch for a grace note, an 8 inch for a rim shot, and I was rock head at that time, and I'm like, yeah, it's more like 4 inches and 2 feet.
Yeah, yeah. Sledgehammers.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I'm bringing it as far up,
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
But anyway, that Garibaldi was awesome. Really nice guy.
But didn't he something kind of creep you out towards the end?
Yeah, well, he started. I, I mean, it's probably creepy to me because I grew up in Catholic schools and then kind of wanted nothing to do with it. But he started to invite me over for Bible study. Like he wanted to study the Bible with me. And I'm like, yeah, I'm out.
Yeah,
I think I just ghosted him. I might have invented that term.
that would kind of creep me out. It's
Yeah.
sitting around with another dude sharing religious experience. I feel
Yeah.
that's something best left to each his own in his own dwelling, right?
Yeah. Yeah. I didn't
I get
realize
that.
it was religious till just then. So that, yeah, at that time, I wouldn't have been open. Now I'd handle that differently, but then I probably just never showed up again or something.
Yeah, yeah. Now, along with what you were doing, you moved down to LA. What
Yeah.
was the first group that you played with that, got to play some of the cool spots and do some cool stuff?
The first band I was in, I was the only white guy in the band. And it was while I was in UCLA, and they had used Jonathan Moffett for stuff before me, but he
Uh,
was starting to
he's
he was
busy.
starting to take off. So
Yeah.
there was an opening, and I was in this band. I don't even remember what it was called, but I was so naive. The guy that ran it was a guy named Gregor,
Okay.
and he was an old school like pimp, basically. And I didn't even understand this, but he had an escort service on Hollywood Boulevard in one of those buildings. And I didn't
Wow.
even know what it was,
Yeah,
but that's
yeah.
where I went to practice. Like he was begging, but I run this escort service, and I'm like, oh, cool, whatever that means, right? And years later,
Oh,
like I think that guy was pimping out hookers.
oh, he was so let's break this down for the viewer. So technically you were playing drums for a pimp
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
or a
Right
guy
on the
that
nose.
runs an escort service.
But I was so enamored with like black music and the bass player and
Oh
the
yeah.
guitar player and
Dude.
all these guys were so funky. I was just
Yeah.
sponging it up and ignoring probably like, the obvious signs. And we did a couple of gigs, and it was like a weird thing to go from UCLA across town, which is like this white, community of college kids, to then go down the road 10 miles to Hollywood on Hollywood Boulevard with it like this element that I just
Yeah, yeah,
didn't know
yeah.
what it was. And it was
It sounds like it's almost you can't believe that you're in this situation, but you're like, man, these guys are funky and
yeah,
I want to play that. And I would have done the exact same thing.
yeah.
I would have
I
been,
wanted I wanted the experience, I wanted the knowledge. And when I first got into Hollywood, my whole technique was the more the better. So I joined every band that let me.
yeah.
At one point I remember this, I had 7 drum sets and I
Wow.
left them all over town, and I was running from different rehearsals early on with no sense of like, well, I don't like what I should have done. And this would have worked, Brad. Tell me if I'm wrong about this. I should have gone to like the Sunset Strip, maybe the Roxy on a Friday night at 10 o'clock, saw that band, got up and punched the drummer, pushed him off the thing, and took over. Like I would have been the coolest guy in the room.
The trick would be picking the right band.
Yeah. Well, my thinking back later was, hey, at 10 o'clock at night on a Friday night, that was the band, because all my bands were playing at 2:30 on Monday night,
Ah,
right? Because
ah,
we were all new to the scene. I'm like, go
okay.
right to the
Yeah,
guys that have already, done their dues.
yeah, yeah.
And that would have been a good move. I don't know about punching them, but
Yeah, yeah, but finding who it is, finding one with a weak link and going, hey,
yeah,
that's what Keith Moon did. He said, hey, I can blow that drummer off the stage. I'm
yeah,
your drummer, and got up there and destroyed the guy's kit. And I'm like, well,
yeah.
we have to go with this guy now. He's a maniac, but we
Unless he has
have to,
another drum, as long as he has another drum set, we'll bring him in.
yeah, yeah, exactly. So, well, that is amazing. Now, how funky were these guys? What songs were you playing?
all original, and they were, in my memory, they were funky. Like the guitar player's name was Mario, and he was like this. He had long hair and
Jerry Curl,
yeah, he had the whole Jerry curl thing going on.
with the long stash,
Oh
Jerry
yeah,
Curl and the stash, and
yeah.
then the chain. You got to have some kind of chain.
And I don't. It might have been before chains were. I
Okay,
don't remember chains,
not
but
a big chain, a small chain,
yeah, it was. Yeah,
like with a little spoon maybe on it or something.
he was. I think he was stoned the whole time I knew him. But I
Probably.
did again. I right out of college, I was kind of jockish or something where
Yeah, yeah,
I missed a few things where I'm
yeah,
like, I was just so happy to be there. I'm like, I was kind of aware that he was really stoned and this guy was a pimp and I think the bass player was a criminal,
yeah, yeah, yeah.
but I'm like, it doesn't matter,
Yeah,
right?
yeah. You're playing the kind of music that you want to play, and it's like everything else might work itself out.
Yeah. And I don't even remember how I left that band. I have no recollection of why I wasn't in that band anymore. We did play gigs, I remember that.
Yeah.
And I never touched, like Hollywood was the weird thing. Like the people that don't know this, when you were on the Sunset Strip, you were only friends with the guys in your band when you were in the band with them. The minute it disbanded, you had no idea where everybody went.
Yeah, yeah.
And
Yeah,
there was
people would
nowhere to keep
disappear.
track of them, really, right?
Yeah,
Like
people
it's a
would
miracle that
disappear.
we kept in touch. It's social media helped where you could kind of find people, but
Yeah.
yeah, you disappeared into some other band, and there at the time there had to be. Did you ever think about this, like Redondo Beach and all the areas, like Sunset Strip, and then the Valley, FM station, all those places? There had to be a good 50 to 100 places you could play.
You could
You now
definitely
need to go to
probably
Orange County.
you could tour up and down California if you it seemed like it was hard to be in Los Angeles and break into San Francisco.
Oh yeah, you didn't even think about doing that.
But everything from LA on down and
Yeah,
even into San Diego you could do.
yeah,
But man, if you could have conquered the whole state, then you would have been like, okay, undeniable if you could have
yeah.
figured out something. But I think San Francisco or is kind of like, yeah, we got our bands, thanks.
Yeah.
And LA's
LA wasn't really known. Yeah, LA and San Francisco never got along.
no.
The Dodgers and Giants don't like each other. When I moved, I was a NorCal boy. When I moved to SoCal, my friends were like, they didn't like it.
Later.
Yeah, no, they just didn't like it. They were just like, what are you, a Dodger fan? It was just met with,
Uh,
criticism and LA glitz and
yeah,
they
yeah,
got they still visited. They were curious about it, but
yeah, yeah.
you know,
There is that thing that LA has this, sheen to it. And,
yeah,
we all know that the image thing out there at the time, I don't know if people understand it. I try to talk about it with the ads for all the hair extensions and makeup and all this stuff. Now, you and I both know that a lot of those bands there were a lot of really bad bands, in LA.
yes.
There were some that were just they'd have amazing photos and all this and then you go and it's just like, oh, this is just complete garbage.
Well, I think at the time, do you remember when it changed from just like when we started, you had to have long hair and a leather jacket. By the time we were done, you had to have a lot of makeup. Well, I guess grunge came, but I remember the change. I remember going on the strip. Do people understand, your audience understand how the Sunset Strip is so different now? Like back then it was littered with like thousands of people walking up and down and dropping into each club. And everyone had a leather jacket, long hair, and the girls were scantily clad, and there was no in between. And then somewhere it morphed into, is that a girl? No, that's a guy.
There
And I
was
remember that change and going, and that was where I kind of was out,
yeah,
right?
the
I just
extreme
couldn't do, I didn't want to apply makeup. I thought it
that
was,
the extreme glam
Yeah,
was part of it. And, but people don't understand that, they lump every band that was playing the Strip in with Poison and Cinderella and that kind of
yeah,
thing. But it was more going on down there. You did have the glam faction. You had us who were doing the funk and a little bit of rap,
yeah.
kind of thing blended in. And then you had, a band like Mozart that had, I guess they had a lot of funding and they were supposedly really good, but just timing came and everything blew up. Then you have Life, Sex, and Death with the
Oh yeah.
Stanley thing, and all that. And I did a whole video on that. Stanley himself actually watched the video, and then that connected me to some other guys. And through my research, saw that Chicago was like a breeding ground for power pop and like rock bands at that time. And those Chicago bands like Enough's Enough, DeMalls,
Yeah.
LSD, those guys had the concept. If we'd had the concept, and the concept is come up with the right name, the right image, and look at Cheap Trick, two pretty boys, two geeks. Look at,
Yeah.
Enough's Enough. We're going to be the hippy dippy Beatle heavy metal guys. DeMalls, they were like dressed in drag, when they first came out and playing, hard rock. And then LSD with having the nut job and the three musicians.
Yeah.
That is a concept. That is something you can draw as a cartoon. And it's
Stanley was kind of a genius, that Stanley guy. Like
he
I never got a chance to actually talk to him, but he was kind of a genius around the like he would sit out in front of the whiskey with the bottle of whiskey, like he was homeless, and then he would get up and go play the show.
just nail it to the wall.
And yeah, and he was an unbelievable performer. So he had this mystique of like, is he really which one is he? Is he the homeless guy? Like, does he really go be homeless after the show? Or
Well,
and
see, that's the concept. They've got the
yeah,
package. Now they should have been way bigger than they were. And there's always kind of stuff, but think about, okay, if we were doing what we were doing, then we
yeah,
should have had, white dreads and like neon graffiti like clothes and like been like
yeah, we should address like Parliament or something.
Parliament Funka, white Parliament Funkadelic,
Yeah,
and had some big like graffiti like thing.
yeah.
That would have
Blew
been
our hair out.
blew our hair out with like dread like things hanging off of it,
Yeah,
and have smoke, coming behind it. That would have the vision. But now as we're older, we see it. Okay, that's what it would have
that's what
taken
we're
to
missing.
go there and make impact, play 2, 3 shows, and it's like, here's your money, boys. Let's get in the studio.
Yeah,
So, but you don't know that when you're a musician and you're like, I'm trying to write this really cool song and
yeah,
I want to play this cool drum part let's come up with these cool riffs. That's music.
yeah,
And there's a difference between music and entertainment. And
yeah,
the Sunset Strip was entertainment first, music second. But if you can combine both,
yeah.
have great songs, but then put on the spectacle, then it becomes undeniable.
I think our criticism of the other bands was they were too much entertainment and too many of the same things, and they forgot to practice. And so
They
we
just
kind of went
didn't.
counter to that, like we're a really good band and we're good musicians, but we're not going to do the, you know,
Yeah, we're just going to wear whatever we want, and
yeah,
you
the
know, and
pyrotechnics and okay.
yeah,
I
but
did. Do you remember one time when we did try to make an attempt? I wore hockey pants on stage. One gig.
yes.
This is
Now,
a
how did
funny
that?
story because anybody that plays hockey gear smells, right? And I wore the hockey pants, which are those big goofy fucking pants.
Yeah, the
But
white pants,
and
right?
I'm sitting and playing and I start sweating, right? And as I'm playing, I'm like, what smells so
So
fucking
it's
bad?
it's
And then
rising from the
I'm
sea.
starting to look down going, oh my God, it's my hockey. Like,
You gotta watch
and then
them,
I
Bob.
couldn't wait to get off stage. I'm like, oh man, this is horrible. I'm never doing this one.
But you know, now that we should have all worn hockey pants. We'd have
You had to
all
buy
worn like
new and unused hockey pants would have been
unused
okay.
hockey pants. Yeah, washed frequently with some kind of deodorizing. Yeah, man. I mean, young guys don't realize that us old guys, we have a lot of knowledge that we learned from our mistakes.
Yeah,
And it's like, dude, I hope there's some young kid right now
yeah,
that hears these words and goes, that's it. I come up with the big
right.
show. Then I write some really good songs and some really good material behind it. And then you've got everything. You've got the whole package. But the hardest part is keeping a band together because it's like you can't find the right guys. It's
Yeah.
and LA, dude, LA, there wasn't like a ton of options as far as guys that could act when you would hold auditions. And this is when we did the audition looking for drums and picked you, there you were really the only option. I mean, and that's not saying you were bad, you were very good. You were the only guy that could actually do it.
Yeah, I remember going and seeing, I showed up to meet Jim, and like you guys made it look bigger than it was, which
Yeah,
was a
yeah.
smart idea. So I'm like, oh, these guys
You
got it
got
going on there.
management.
Right. And I think that was Jim's doing. But I remember sitting in there, I met to meet Jim, and he was gonna, you fucking drummer, remember how Jim was?
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
We'll
Oh, you
see.
fucking drummer.
Yeah,
Yeah,
we'll see.
yeah,
So
we'll see.
I go meet Jim and some other guys trying out, and I'm like, I couldn't help myself. I was like, this guy's awful. Like this guy can't even keep a beat. Like, what the hell? Like, I'm going to kick the shit out of him. And I think Jim liked that, but I wasn't
I
even.
remember that. I remember him saying, "Well, this guy's got a lot of attitude." So yeah. So for people
Yeah, but
that are hearing this, we had a manager, the Jim Babuccio, shiny suit, Italian guy, owned an
yeah,
auto body shop, drove a Cadillac.
yeah,
It doesn't get any more stereotypical than that. And he had the attitude, hey, oh,
yeah.
you gonna play drums today? What's going on here? And then the brother is the bass player in the band. So
But you
it's
don't
a
mention
team.
that right away.
It's a
You don't
team.
go, oh, my brother's taking us on. He doesn't know what
Yeah,
the fuck he's doing.
yeah, yeah. So it was
So,
because the ad said James Brothers Management.
yes.
So it's like, but in reality, I mean, they were funding the thing at that time, just paying the rent on the rehearsal building, basically.
Do you remember what else you didn't tell me?
What was that? Oh yeah. So like I said, the
You started going into rehearsals.
the audition
Yeah,
was kind of like, okay, here's this riff, kind of like talked you through a tune. Now
yep,
let's see if you can play. And it was like a funk groove with a bing, ding, 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 ding. James Brown hit at the end, and some basic kind of stuff like that.
yeah.
And you played it, and I was like, well,
Well,
this.
I liked
Yeah.
it because your funk background was that was what attracted me, and the horns. And I was like, this guitar player is good. He's not, he reminds me of like the funky. It's not that dumbass, 80s metal kind of thing that was a lot of
Dumb
LA.
guy. Yeah.
Yeah.
Playing dumb guy, dumb guy, dumb guy, dumb guy, dumb
Well,
guy.
I'll jump to this. Yeah, dumb, 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 dumb. I'll jump to what you didn't tell me. So we went into rehearsals for a while, right?
Oh yeah, it
And
was about
always,
a
oh,
few weeks, couple weeks.
Yeah, Jamie's out of town. There was some,
Yeah.
I don't even remember, but there's a lot
We
of
told you
buzzing
we
around
had a
this guy,
stinger, but
Jamie.
he's out of town.
Yeah. And then finally, after I'm hooked, it's like, yeah, our singer's in jail. Like, oh, how long? You guys were waiting for him to get out of jail.
Yeah,
And
it was,
that
and it
held the
was.
band
I
up
think
for,
it was like another month.
yeah, it was a while.
It
But
was
that's
like,
great. Sunset Strip,
and
somebody's always in trouble. Somebody's always, does your audience know how many times people fucked up the night when it was their most important night of their life? I had at least 5 bands that made it all the way up to the record companies are here, and some idiot always sabotage it, usually the singer, right? They were
Ding, ding, ding,
absolutely,
ding, 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 ding.
yeah, we
You are
experienced that a lot.
you are the winner of the new Darwin Award, presented to Bob Nellis for his work in talking about singers on the Sunset Strip. Ding, 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 ding.
There's a
Uh,
whole nother issue.
now I don't know if you were, I don't think you were on a gig prior to Jamie going to jail.
No,
We had a gig where he did something during the day, maybe with a girl. I don't know what was going on in the room, but we get to the show and the voice is gone. And that was a night where, hey, so and so is going to be here tonight. It's a big night. It's a headline and Friday night, that kind of nonsense.
and you can't sing.
I mean, look, dude, temptation is temptation. It's all water under the bridge. Would we be alive now if we were filthy rich rock stars back then? No, we were too stupid to be able to handle that kind of money and fame. So
Yeah, we would have fucked it up.
we would have screwed it up. It was just a
Motley
matter of,
Crue.
yeah, yeah. So you had other bands though before you played with us
Yeah.
where similar situations. Tell me one of those situations.
I was in a band called The Passion, and it we went up the ranks just like you do. Started at the horrible Sunday night at midnight,
Yeah.
got a following. Billy Sheehan once told me, when you get past, he would say, "Is your band family and friends?" I was like, "What do you mean?" He's like, "Does anyone come and see you besides your family and friends?" And I laughed so hard at that, because in the beginning, isn't that what you're doing? It's like, Brad,
Yeah. You have
come
to
on
beg
bro.
everybody. Yeah.
I owe you. Yeah.
Yeah.
And then one day your band, hopefully, right? You walk into the gig and you look around and you go, shit, who are
Yeah.
all these people? And then you're not sure of it, because it may
Yeah.
be the band after a band before, but eventually this band had all of that going on. We were the darlings of the Coconut Teaser and Len Fagan, remember that?
Wow. Yeah.
And Len got us a development deal,
Wow.
right? And we got like $5,000 to go record, got this news, and the singer was gone. And no one ever heard from her again. The rumor was that she reignited her heroin habit, unsubstantiated, have never talked to her since, don't know. I've looked her up occasionally. She was a brilliant singer, but I think this happened more to me than I can imagine, that you get there, what everybody says is the dream, and somebody goes, no, I cannot have this dream. I will shoot this band in the foot. So as a drummer, this sucks, because you start over the next day.
Yeah.
It's like, what do you mean? Nobody goes, hey, Bob, what are you doing? We'll put you in our band.
Yeah. Yeah.
You're just a drummer, right?
Because
You don't write
everybody's
songs.
so focused in the band they're in.
Yeah.
It's
Then you
not
got to
so
go find a new band.
go find another, and it's like then you go through the same, and then this band's got this problem, and then this or this weakness,
Boy Elroy had 7 singers.
Yeah, we couldn't find, trying to find a winning formula.
Yeah.
It's like a needle in a haystack. And
there were good ones, and there were, we went through ones that were really good at performing, and spin the mic, twirl around. I won't say his name, but
Jade.
And then there was one that could sing his butt off, but he was like a bore for the audience, and that bothered. We were always like, "Oh, this isn't. We need a little more salt, a little more pepper." And
this bed is too small.
Yeah,
this bed is okay, but it's cold. It's under the bed, and then this bed feels perfect, but oh no, here comes to pull that out of the.
This bed has a drug problem.
Yeah. So
I would anybody that's young and watching this, the biggest thing I would tell them is be more selective about the bands, and look for the little sabotages. People will sabotage themselves, and it was there for us to see, and or for me to see. I thought it was the lifestyle, right? I thought you were supposed to be half on drugs to pull this
Yeah,
off. That
yeah.
was
That,
part of
that
the
myth,
territory.
the
And
rock
now I
and
go,
roll
all the
myth.
people that made it figured that part out and managed to sing anyway, right?
Yeah, yeah. You have to do the job first.
Yeah,
You have to be reliable.
yeah.
Even in my wild days, I got friends in Nashville and says, "Dude, you were the most punctual and like together mess I've ever known." Because
You're a
dude,
mess, but I was on time,
I would
goddamn.
be on time and I would know my parts and I might be just sweating profusely, but I was they didn't have to worry about me not showing up and not being prepared. So I
Yeah,
mean, you gotta do your job. I mean,
yeah, it's a full package, right?
and then as you get older, you realize you don't need any of that nonsense, and it's
Yeah.
just poison. I still have my Red Bull though. That keeps you got
That
to be
doesn't count.
in this business. You got to be able to yibbidi dibbidi 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 do. You gotta be fast talking
Can I
and
quote you on
slow
that?
walking.
Hey,
Dibbidi.
I watched you and Roger the other day. It's probably the first time I've ever watched any podcast all the way through.
Wow. Wow.
Yeah, because I don't know why I'm like why do I want to
Well,
anyway,
research.
I realized that I really liked Roger, but I was such a competitive guy
Yeah.
that I didn't have the friendship with that guy that I should have because he was the fucking old drummer. Fuck him. I'm
Yeah.
better
Yeah.
or
Yeah.
something. And
Yeah.
I don't even know. I don't think I heard Roger play. But
Yeah.
even when he was doing really well, I was like, "Ugh." And
Yeah.
now
Yeah.
I'm like, what an ass I was. Like the other
But we
thing,
were all like that. We were all like that. I mean,
the other thing I would advise to people is drummers are your allies, not your enemies. Drummers were so mean to me on the strip. Like you're getting your kid off and theirs is coming on. And I would try to go, hey, good job, bro. Right. As
yeah.
we're passing by.
Yeah. Yeah.
But when I was getting off, the guy next to me, 90% of the time, I started to notice this. It was like, hey, can you move your shit? Not a word of encouragement.
Yeah. Yeah. Hey, bro, how you doing? What's
Yeah,
up?
good to see you.
Dap
How's
you
the
up.
band going?
Hey, can I help you get your stuff
Yeah.
off?
And they were annoyed that your shit was still there, and
Yeah. Yeah.
that's as far as it went.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
I think help each other out, guys.
It wasn't a very helpful scene. We had a few bands that had like some cool dudes in it that every now and then would pop in and you'd party with them a little bit and stuff. But it
Yeah,
was so competitive that
yeah,
you just and a lot of times you didn't go see a lot of those bands because you're rehearsing, you're working on your own stuff, and then the only time you go out, you go play your gig, but you don't want to be at the gig 4 hours early because you'll be burnt out by the time it's time to play,
yeah. And you didn't really go to the Sunset Strip unless you were playing. We
or
go to practice
or the
instead.
Rainbow. Go to the Rainbow.
Yeah, where there's no band.
That's perfect.
Yeah.
I actually, when I was drinking, that's what I prefer. I prefer
Well, you
something
can hear.
rocking, kind of playing in the
Yeah.
background and general carousing. Now, do you remember any nights at the Rainbow or any crazy stuff that happened?
I have I have a story that is probably well, I'll just tell it. So I had a girlfriend that she had told me this, and she'd never told anyone before. But when she was really young, she worked at a comedy club, and she had a comedian like rape her, basically, right? And she never told anyone that. She quit the
Wow.
club. She was like 21 years old. And I knew this story. And I was in the Rainbow one night, and she looks at me and she goes, "That's him." And I'm like, "What?" And she goes, "That's the guy. I haven't seen him since." So
Wow.
now I'm like,
Now you're
I'm,
kind of fired up.
well, I'm just over there with a drink in my hand,
Yeah.
stewing, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
And I don't know what I'm gonna do, but
Yeah.
I'm
Yeah.
just like, I know I'm supposed to be mad. This is, by the way, makes me very adolescent, right?
Yeah. Well, but that's how it was back in those days.
Yeah.
Emotions, everybody.
And yeah, yeah. So I'm holding this drink, and it's a table full of people, and we were a table full of people. No one else knows what's going on. And this girl finally looks at him and says something. And the guy started to say something. She's like, do you even recognize me? And her voice was shaking, like she was fired up. And the next thing I knew, like the guy said something, and I had this drink in my hand. I just fucking
Whipped it.
threw the drink and glass. I just annihilated the whole table, and all hell broke loose.
Woo!
And like I got up, and I was trying to get after this guy, and it never involved a fight. I ended up getting kicked out, but it was one of those like dark moments where I kind of went to the defense of this
Yeah,
girl,
yeah,
even though it was 10 years earlier or something.
yeah, yeah,
That was a fairly typical rainbow story. Stuff like that happened,
yeah,
there were a lot of fighting, a lot of drugs in that place, and a lot of sex, right? You could
yeah,
hook up in the rainbow pretty easy.
yeah,
Like my,
yeah,
my friend Dave Smerginski, do you remember Smurge?
yeah.
He used to call them 158 dates.
What was it?
You get to the bar with 2 minutes left before closing time, and you look around, and whoever's left, you're like, hey, what are you guys gonna do?
Yeah, yeah. Where's the party at?
The rainbow was pretty good for last minute hookups, if
Yeah.
I recall.
Yeah, on Christmas Eve, Christmas, but it didn't matter. It was open every night,
It
dude.
was open, and John and Twistle was always there.
John and Twistle and Lemmy would always be there. And
Yeah,
people just want to hear these stories. There's people that lived it and have been in some of these bands, have reached out.
yeah,
Then there's people that wish they'd have gotten out there, or younger people that read about it and want to know what it's all about. And you can't recreate that moment in time. It was just something from
yeah.
another
Stuff
world.
like that. I played with Lemmy's kid in a band, and Lemmy came and saw us one time, and Lemmy being Lemmy, at the end of the show, it was a female singer, and his name was Paul. He was the guitar player, and
Yeah, yeah,
me,
Paul.
it might have been Babushio.
Okay.
I can't remember. Anyway, we played the gig. It was at the Central, the Viper Room now,
Yeah,
right?
yeah.
Um, and after it's like Lemmy's like, "Hey, what'd you think?" And he goes, "She's fucking cunt."
She's
About the
what?
singer. She's fucking cunt.
Oh,
And it was
wow.
like, really? Why? He goes, she didn't disband. It pissed him off. Like we were all up there supporting her, and she didn't. I didn't even notice it, but he
Oh,
really
wow.
didn't like that. And
Wow.
I thought about it, and I go, man, that guy's a friggin' legend. And
Yeah, it's Lemmy, man.
and that him saying that is like just disapproval. It's
Yeah,
not the
yeah.
way we think of the word normally when you're
Yeah,
from
yeah.
Britain.
Yeah, yeah. So now you were telling me that you played, now I think you played in like a blues group with Tommy Ray, right?
Yeah,
Now, Tommy Ray had a connection to Guns N' Roses somehow, right?
yeah,
And
yeah. We
the Duff McKagan thing.
Yeah, the Duff McKagan thing, he jumped up on stage one night with me on drums and him on bass. And Tommy's like, we'll just play a 12-bar blues, right? And Duff just kind of, I think Duff he was one of the biggest rock stars in the world at that time, for
Yeah.
sure.
Oh yeah.
And for sure, and I'm not disrespecting him, he was for sure on drugs at that
Yeah,
time.
yeah. Deep in
Pretty
his
well.
cups. Deep in
Yeah,
his
it was
cups.
pretty well known that he had some problems with that, and I think he's sober now, and
Yeah.
great for him, right? And I'll bet Duff doesn't even remember this, right?
No.
But we were playing a basic blues, and the biggest thing that struck me was he came back and he looked like a little kid going, "Can you tell me when to change?" On like a 12-bar blues.
Before, yeah, when to
He
go to
didn't
the four,
know
when to go to the
I don't know if he
five.
couldn't count or didn't know it, which seemed unbelievable to me. But I remember just going like, hey, dun, 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 dun,
Or
dun,
play the
dun, dun,
pickups.
dun, dun, dun.
Da-da-dum,
Yeah, giving him the cues and him like
da-da-dum.
thankful, and he nailed it. But I'm like, I remember walking away going, that's the biggest rock star on the planet, and I cannot believe he doesn't know a 12-bar blues progression.
But
Like, how is
see,
that?
that's kind of emblematic of some of the musicianship on the
Yeah,
strip is they would be in a rehearsal room running their tunes.
over and over.
They would do that and they'd work on their show and where they're going to stand and
Yep,
how I'm going to hold the bass down here and all that stuff and their
yep,
performance, their movement.
yep,
But when it came down to having played in clubs or a jazz
yeah,
band, or having any kind of actual musical training, these were just guys that were just somebody handed a bass and go, here, go, dum, 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 dum.
yeah,
And so playing a 12 bar blues was just not in their vocabulary.
yeah. I just kind of assumed everybody knew that. Like, I'm a drummer and I don't do chord changes.
Yeah.
And
Yeah. But you can
and I
hear it.
knew, yeah, you
You
if
hear
you've
it.
heard it enough, you kind of know it, right?
Now, if you really, what they would do in Nashville is they would screw with him and they'd start adding all the chord subs to the
Oh,
blues.
really?
Oh yeah, they just start throwing chord subs so that he would just be completely lost and basically have to stop playing.
And
Yeah.
put his bass between his legs and go home.
I mean, yeah, I mean, some of those guys are just unrelenting. It's like, dude, and then you really gotta tune in when they're doing that because, like, dude, he's going half step, he's going playing the half diminished on this, and then he's, before the four chord, he's going to the altered chord, in one, and all this stuff, and you wouldn't be
Will
able
the
to.
audience know that stuff? Will they identify it as a blues still, or does that lose them?
If you're playing in
What
Nashville.
you just said was all guitar stuff.
People in Nashville would get it. The
Yeah,
places where you would play that kind of thing would get it, but
yeah.
you wouldn't necessarily be playing it down on Lower Broadway in the middle of Sweet Home Alabama.
Okay.
You'd be playing it in the jazz club, Rudy's Jazz Club. You play it in Third and Lindsley, where they have, different types of music. You'd play it at the dinner club with the people that have money, that want to hear
Yep.
it. Old Nashville people that have it money. It used to be all of the elites of Nashville. They didn't want to hear country at their parties, at their weddings, at their CEO things, at their Christmas parties. They wanted R&B bands. And
Really?
white people would be dancing to these old like soul records. So all the stuff from the 60s, 70s, and some into the 80s, literally for decades, we were playing the same playlist and same songs. And it was that same, those people with money, they don't want to hear Garth Brooks. They're the people that
Right.
sell Garth Brooks to the world. But what they want to hear is a band that's got a groove, that can make them dance and plays cool shit.
And is it all like 70s and 80s funk bands?
It's all of that stuff. Earth, Wind, and Fire, Commodores,
I
Prince.
love that stuff.
Oh, it's what we did for decades. That's what's such an amazing thing about Nashville is it's like it had this whole little underground thing, but those were the gigs that paid the best in town would be the Saturday night playing for the rich folk.
Oh, wow.
Oh, so
Not country on that main street there.
nah, and you get to play more on those gigs because you would start off the night playing a couple jazz tunes, and then you'd graduate to a couple, chill, surfy R&B type things, and then it would progress to the full on funk, and by the end of the night, everybody's going nuts, and you're just cranking out the funk, you know.
Wow. The last time I was in Nashville, I went during the day, and my 14-year-old, I think at the time, was allowed to go into a
Oh yeah,
club. And I think it was who's the rock star that has a
Kid
club?
Rock.
Kid Rock. It was Kid Rock's club. And they have that stage in the middle.
Hmm.
And it was really funny to watch. Like they had a cover band, and the girl in the middle was wearing black leather pants where you could see her fart.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
And I'm watching her taking this whole thing and going, this is like 1 o'clock in the afternoon.
Yeah.
People are getting drunk, and you could hear the bands next door and on the other side.
Yeah.
And it was really funny for me to kind of watch. I'm watching for a while, and then I look at my little 14-year-old who you met,
Yeah,
and
yeah.
his mouth was his, like he'd
Was it
never
like
seen
that?
anything like it. And I'm like, oh man, that was
That ain't
the
nothing.
Sunset Strip,
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
right? With dudes in leather pants, and like
Yeah,
for me, it was like, oh wow, look at that. And for him,
yeah,
it was,
yeah.
oh
Yeah,
my
yeah.
God.
We've seen it. We've seen, madness before. It's a different kind of madness in Nashville. And like you said, it's all day long. But the
Yeah,
difference is they're not playing original music.
no.
Back then you'd play one or two cover songs and your whole the rest of your set would be your stuff. And Nashville, on the other hand, these guys they're beer salesmen. But this is gonna get me where I want to cap
All
this off.
right. Yeah,
So
we won't do Nashville because I'll mostly have questions. So we'll go to where you want to
okay.
go.
So now you've got a company, you are the COO, if I'm got
Yeah,
this correctly, of Offbeat. We
yeah.
do some work together doing, creative campaigns and all that stuff for you guys. And you have been in this business, with all the marketing stuff and the tchotchkes and all this stuff, to help companies, bands, anybody build their brand. How did you take that from, say, the music business and bring it to the present day where you're still, able to help people out?
Well, I was in LA and I needed a job basically, and I met a guy in karate right out of college. And he told me, he sold shirts. So the first thing I did was call my old fraternity and sold them fraternity shirts. And the one
Hear
day,
that, kids?
yeah, yeah, I was a hustler, and I had
You're
gotten a
hustling.
day job, and I worked for a title insurance company right out of college, and it was 7 a.m. to 3 p.m. And I was like, this is great because I'll have all this time for rock and roll. But rock and roll goes till 2 or 3.
Yeah.
And at 7 started to get early and earlier. So I was starting to go, I don't know how well I can do this for very long. So I had my eyes open, and then he told me about this, and I kind of put two and two together that everyone had shirts in college for every little event. So I started there, and one day I was in line handing my artwork to the t-shirt printer, and this guy turns around, and he's a friendly guy, and he goes, oh, what do you got there? And I was like, a fraternity shirt. And he goes, oh, I sell all the record companies, right? And I just went, bing, right? He had no idea I was a drummer. And I was like, what do you mean? And he turns around and he goes, oh, I got this Tina Turner shirt. I'm doing like 800 shirts. And I'm like, I'm doing 50 shirts, right?
Wow.
And in my brain, I just went, oh my God, like I will be a
Yeah, yeah.
drummer.
I need to
I'll
do
go
that.
get all those accounts, and then I'll hand them this is how old I am, cassette tape, and I'll get signed to be a rock star. But I'll make all this money till then.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
And the next day I called record companies. And the funny thing was, I got some appointments, and the first girl that took a chance on me had to think I was cute because I was explaining to her this fraternity shirt, going, well, this is a 2-color, right? And it's so beyond, like, she knows this. She's like an art director. And I'm
Yeah,
like,
yeah.
now there's an orange and there's a white. And she must have taken pity on me, and she gave me a PO. And then I was
Wow.
right enough to go, all right, well, I got in with A&M Records. I'll call Warner Brothers the next day. And then I was like, oh, I just did this David Bowie job at A&M. Can I come see you guys? And they went, oh, like it made sense to them.
Yeah.
And then I got into Warner Brothers, and then Virgin Records started from Warner Brothers. And this is where I kind of had my aha moment. I went down to Virgin and met these people, and 2 days earlier, a vendor came by and he showed me all this stuff that he sold, and he had like these clocks and stuff with logos on it. And I barely understood any of this, right? But he was a hockey player, and we ended up getting drunk, and we had a lot of fun with this guy. And I go into Virgin and I do this meeting, and they go, "Hey, can you find this clock?" And I look at the clock and I go, "That fucking guy just showed me that clock 2 days ago, and they're on La Brea." And I look at her and I go, "Give me an hour." And she
Wow.
looked kind of aghast. And I go, "Can I borrow that?" And I drove down the street to this supplier. And he goes, "Yeah,
Wow.
I got it right here." And it was an $80,000 order. Like I walked back to Virgin, they
Wow.
go, "Cool, we'll cut you a PO." They didn't even know anything about me. And I
Wow.
remember going, "Holy shit, this is completely like, boom," right? You know what I
Yeah,
mean?
yeah.
I'm in. And then it kind of started free falling where I went to this Jane, I went to a pitch. Think of this, Brad. I had hair down to here. And Jane Fonda was releasing a workout line. And they go, "You can come pitch for it," which I didn't even know what that meant.
Yeah,
And I
yeah.
took the guy that taught me the business with me. And I went there with this hair, and it was a round table of a bunch of vendors, which has never happened. And they go,
Yeah,
"You
yeah.
guys all do your pitch." And I'm thinking, I don't know what a pitch is. Right. So I
Yeah.
stood up and I just like, "Oh, I make t-shirts." I don't even know what I said. Right. And I went home, and like 2 days later, we got a call. They go, "You got the Jane Fonda account." And I started making like
Wow.
yoga mats and all this stuff. And it kind of like I just struck gold earlier, really early. My only regret is I wish this is something for the kids, right? I wish somebody had told me to buy real estate. Like I was buying fun. You knew me. I was buying fun cars, and
Yeah.
I was spending money. "Hey, Brad, the drinks are on
Yeah,
me," and
yeah,
acting
yeah.
like a rock
Yeah.
star.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
renting, and then I just rent nicer places.
Yeah. Yeah.
And had I bought something in LA, I could have, in those days, you could
Retired.
get
Yeah.
something in the Valley for 200 grand.
Dude, you could have bought a house back then for probably about 40 grand.
In the Valley?
Yeah, you could have bought the shock house probably for
Yeah,
$40,000.
I bet you could have.
And that house
It's
now
probably
would be
1.3 million now.
1.3, 1.5.
Yeah. All you had to do is live there, which you did beautifully.
I was actually one of the better tenants.
Were you?
I never missed, I always paid my rent. I didn't like trash the place. I had my own private quarters with a lock on the door, and I could just go in there and do as I wish.
Yeah.
You know?
You didn't always lock the door, Brad.
Well, sometimes. Yeah. I try to remember to lock the door.
So getting back to how did I get out of that? Well, the entertainment company I love, but it's also very tricky to always have the newest, latest, greatest thing. And it's very time sensitive heavy. Like
Yeah,
we
yeah,
still do a lot of tour merch, and you have to hit a tour date because they're only in Oklahoma
yeah,
for that night. So it's stressful. So it became, and I loved it, but it's also I'm not allowed to talk about it.
yeah,
As I got older, I started going, I want the stuff that I can count on that companies do that are much more boring.
more stable though.
They're stable, they reorder the same stuff. So I just started working on like changing towards
Your
like
focus.
do a lot of healthcare and things that are more stable. And then when you get good at it, you get to pick who you want to help. So,
Yeah.
I had a friend a guy that worked for me, his daughter got cancer, and she ended up at Children's Hospital and getting complete bone marrow. Like they
Wow.
took her at like 16 years old, and she survived, right?
Wow.
So after that experience, I started to kind of zero in on wanting to help things like that where somebody's kid got help. If I'm going to sell a t-shirt, it might as well have some other
Yeah,
kind
yeah.
of cool tie-in
Help
that,
people.
yeah.
That
Otherwise, I'm
makes
just a
sense.
t-shirt sales guy, and that's a little bit hard to go. That's where my drumming went. Like I'm a t-shirt guy. Like I struggled with that for a bit, but then I realized I help a lot of people by employing them, and that's worth something, right? Versus, you know, feeling down that I sell Bic pens or something, right?
But here's the full circle moment.
Yeah,
If we had made it and
yeah,
we take our old ragged butts out there and we were still beating up the trail, trying to make our 10 to 20 or 30 grand each weekend, slogging it out, ultimately we would be selling t-shirts.
no, yeah,
That is
and
where
hats.
business, what is it? The guy, Exodus Basis says he's a t-shirt salesman, not a musician. We don't
Yeah.
sell blank for records. If we don't go out and sell t-shirts, we don't make money. So
So what that is, Brad, I can explain that. The record company stopped making money on records. So they started signing merch deals to make up for it,
yeah,
right? In the old days, I did a lot of merch that coincided with the release of the Like a Virgin album that
yeah,
went to all the Tower Records, and they wanted a bunch of stuff there for that day. Now you can get everything online, so the record companies had to kind of shift to, we'll sign you, Brad, to your solo act, but we want the merch deal too. So
yeah.
in Exodus's case, my guess is maybe they kept their merch rights, or they just don't make very much on the shirts because the
The
record
show.
company controls it.
Well,
But it
that
occurred to me at some point, and that's kind of when I started to let go of the drumming dream, that I made more on a t-shirt than the drummer did,
yeah, yeah,
right? That started to occur to me, like, and I can be in a lot of bands, not just one.
yeah, yeah. I think it's full circle because either way you slice it, if we still look,
I'm still peddling t-shirts.
I was selling beer for years, playing in the clubs, and I
Yeah,
realized I'm a beer salesman, and if the bar people buy a lot of beer, then I'm going to get called back every week. And
that's right.
when I stop drinking, it's there's no reason for me to be there, and there's no reason, for anybody else to see me. It's almost you had to even some nights pretend like you're pounding beers and doing this to
Yeah,
convince the audience to get it. Come on, get another round,
yeah.
and you're selling beer. So either way, you're
You
selling
weren't
something.
pretending.
Well, sometimes,
No, well,
sometimes,
the optimistic part of me, Brad, goes, listen, the t-shirt guy's got to make it. If I were friends with the Exodus guy, I'd go, dude, you're helping everyone in that
yeah,
scenario. I
yeah.
know it. I know you wanted to be a rock star and on the freaking throne, and everyone caters to you and throws blow at you. But the fact is, you're now at the point where you're helping other people too, and that's noble, right?
You're keeping the
And
business going and
yeah, the
keeping people
bartenders are
employed.
making more because your band, the t-shirt guys are making more. This whole thing helps itself. I used to be critical of all that. I used to be critical of Madonna, say, going, how could she make it? She doesn't sing that well. And then one day I realized I have more respect for her, that she didn't really sing that well and she still made it.
Yeah.
And I was mostly mad because I didn't figure it out.
Yeah,
And
yeah. She
so
had
all these people,
the entertainment. She
yeah,
figured out her thing, her
figured it
brand.
out. She got better. She works harder than anybody, and
Yeah,
she deserves everything,
she
even if you
did
don't
it.
like her, you
Yeah.
know. And good for her, and good for the Exodus guy. He's still out there.
He's still alive, and we're still alive. And I want to thank you so much for an extremely entertaining inside peek at the Sunset Strip. Hey, this is just part one. We might have you back.
All
Me and
right,
you are going to hang. You're going to come down to Florida. I'm going to go up there. We're going to throw a barbecue shindig and bless the world with our presence once again. Thank you so
awesome.
much, Bob. And
All
I
right,
will
have a
see
great
you
night.
soon. Thank you, brother.
See ya.
See ya.